Let's Achieve Change is a podcast by Pamela Grove, Doctor of Physical Therapy, Pain and Movement Specialist of Metanoia Education and Wellness Center. My goal is to make you aware of various health and wellness topics. Every 2 weeks, Let's Achieve Change will appear with episodes with various topics with interviews and narratives, especially as it pertains to health and wellness and chronic pain and disability. I propose to be the voice for those silent sufferers out there. If you'd like to learn more about Let's Achieve Change or Metanoia Education Wellness Center, please visit our website at changeachieve.com. Hello, thank you for joining me today on Let's Achieve Change. I'm Pamela Grove, Doctor of Physical Therapy, Pain and Movement Specialist of Metanoia Education and Wellness Center. Listen, if you want to make some changes, you have tuned into the right podcast. Now listen, don't forget to hit that notification button so that you can subscribe and you won't miss any future episodes on some changes you might want to make. Hello, listeners. Welcome back. It is episode 6, and I'm so excited because we have a lot to do today. We're going to recap some of the things that the guests on episodes 1 to 5, things that they brought out to identify some life changes and alterations they had to make. But before we also dive into that, we want to at least start to bring together some of these things that could be affecting you, some of the things that you might be concerned about, that we need to first identify how we can come to some better conclusions on how to help you in these areas. I want to do the next maybe 2 episodes on trying to identify these life alterations. As I begin to recap on the different guests from episodes 1 to 5, there are going to be some commonalities and there are going to be some differences that they all had to make adjustments in certain areas. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to talk about Charles. Charles was in episode 1. He describes how maybe the possibility of the increased use of steroids leading to his degeneration of his spine and into his hips. And he having to then finally have the surgery for his back, into his hips, refusion and all like that, right? And then we had Sarah. She was also in episode 1, and she talks about how greater than 20 years of ongoing pain and lack of diagnosis, having to finally leave the military because she could not continue to do her necessary duties of lifting, etc., and then not having surgery or any type of major intervention for greater than 25 years. Okay. Then we go into episode 3, and then we have, episode 2, and we had the first Christine, because we had 2 Christines over the last few weeks. The first Christine, she talks about how the system that she was involved in, which was a workers' comp system, how she went from back and forth before she finally got a diagnosis, and they didn't even do the rotator cuff. They didn't repair the tear. They did something else to try to, they said, to deal with the impingement, but she never had the rotator cuff repaired. So in that sense, she developed a chronic regional pain syndrome. She developed an adhesive capsulitis, which is a frozen shoulder. Then in episode 3, we had Tamika. Tamika also had a lot of delayed intervention. So let's kind of recap her. We're looking at, first of all, we don't know whether she suffered post-traumatic arthritis that led to her degeneration in her cervical region, because she tells us about the MRI results that showed that she had degeneration at C6 and C7. She was not like Charles and Sarah, who, was in the military and definitely did heavy lifting. She does recall having a fall when she was 7 years old that was never treated, right? So that could have led to that, but who knows, right? The thing we're trying to say, though, is she started having severe symptoms at the age of 38 when she was having this electrical nerve impingement that went down her arm, right? And we're looking at 5 years without having any thorough intervention. And the frustration she goes through dealing with the traditional medical model insurance system that she was involved in, how she tried to get referrals and the delay in referrals. So I would say she went through a lot of, not just her physical problems she saw, But she went through a lot of emotional stress of feeling that she never was going to get anything resolved. Next, we pick up with episode 4. And we had 2 guests. One was Lindsay. Lindsay talked about having ongoing seizures for, my God, over 15 years. There was no diagnosis, right? Back and forth with that. She had to finally leave college. She had to finally go back home. She could not fend for herself as far as financial things was going. And that was years of torture for her. Okay. And then lastly, we did have the second Christine, and she also talks about the delayed intervention of the proper types of intervention, possibly having the surgery of her back done, and maybe what's unnecessary because it really did not address any pain that she continued to have. And then she started to have more and more urological problems in a pelvic girdle area. That's probably was there for a while anyway, but never was diagnosed until further down the road. So what's the conclusion here? The conclusion is that, yes, delayed intervention, improper intervention, all have caused many people to have chronic pain and disabilities. Okay. So we're going to now take a little bit of a digression and address this issue about overuse of steroids and why it can be a problem. So first thing is the increased use of steroids, excessive use of steroids, I should say, for long periods of time can cause the bone to deteriorate. And the reason being is because several reasons. One is because it decreases the body's ability to absorb calcium from the intestines. That's one. 2, it can increase the rate at which the bones are breaking down, which leads to the softening of the bones or osteopenia or osteoporosis. And we'll get into more about that in a second. Thirdly, it can slow down the cells, osteoblasts, the cells that actually build the bones, okay? And fourthly, it affects the level of estrogen, our hormones estrogen and testosterone, which also can affect the body's ability for bone loss, okay? All right, now we're going to then dive into how would you know whether you need a bone density test. So, what is low bone mass density? Well, when the bone goes through its normal process of reabsorption and remodeling, its bone tissue breaks down and releases the normal amount of mineral content, right? Well, as the new bone is replaced. But this doesn't happen with osteoporosis. So we end up with weakened and brittle bones that have low mineral content. So let's do some statistics. In the United States alone, in 1 year, at least 2 million people will have fractures due to osteoporosis. And even greater news, astounding news, is that greater than 80% of those over 50 have never been bone density tested. Okay. Usually when these fractures occur, there has been no symptoms. Another statistic is 1 out of 2 women and 1 out of 4 men over 50 will have these spontaneous out of the blue fractures in their spine and hips just from just coughing, standing, bending over, just walking. So why is this important? We must promote bone health. So what are my wellness pain begun tips for today? Well, first of all, we need to find ways to get ample amount of calcium and vitamin D in our diet. That might mean supplements, but be careful you're choosing. And include foods like sardines and salmon, nuts, cottage cheese, and dark greens. Weight-bearing exercises, what does that mean for the arms? Weights, light weights, resistor bands. For the legs, maybe doing some aerobics, right? Some physio ball, and maybe some walking, okay? Now, bone density testing earlier versus later, no smoking, and low alcohol consumption. So I think we have time to talk about this one more of the factors that seems to be very prevalent with chronic pain and disabilities sufferers. I mean, that is the subject on emotional stress. So let's dive into a little bit more about the studies about how that correlates. Okay, so now we're going to address some of the emotional factors with stress and how it might correlate to chronic pain. So yeah, the general consensus out there with research is that yes, there is definitely a correlation that emotions is one of the biggest contributing factor to persistent pain. And these things can cause harm to our body structures. So what are some of the symptoms of emotional stress? There are several, but let's just talk about a few. One could be manifesting chest pain, being very, very depressed, acting more aggressively towards others, all right? Becoming aware of all these different symptoms can be very good because it can start to decrease the severity of the harm to our different bodily structures. What some of the harms that can be made onto our body structures could be, it can affect our muscles and joints. Emotional stress can affect our hearts and lungs, our skin, our hair, like in our digestive system, having our GI disturbances, right? It can cause more problems with our head, like with headaches, jaw pain, like in TMJ, shoulder pain. It can also affect our immune system, making our immune system not as it should be. Okay. So based on some of the symptoms, let's look at them in a little bit more detail. Things like being easily frustrated, agitated, or moody, finding yourself to be more overwhelmed, more likely to losing control of the situation easily, becoming more emotional about situations than you usually are, especially something that's not even maybe that significant, finding yourself having more difficulty concentrating, using alcohol or drugs to attempt to relieve some of your stress might be a sign. And also putting yourself in isolations, like avoiding others more readily than you normally would have done. Okay. So I'm going to give you some wellness pain begone tidbits that might just help a little bit. And we need to just try to maybe do some stress management, debriefing throughout the day, several times a day. Sometimes journaling helps. Doing an activity with someone, finding someone to just get together with, that seems to help versus isolation. Meditation, people find that just having moments to meditate is really good. After you find yourself trying to do these different stress management techniques and you still feel that you're overwhelmed or you're stuck in a rut, you might want to seek professional help rather than trying to suppress the emotions, okay? Always remember that recognizing the sign of emotional stress is wisdom and it's not shame, okay? So basically, we're going to end with that note about emotional stress. We seem to be very prevalent among many who are suffering with chronic pain and disabilities. And so we just want you to definitely have some other avenues to pursue as an outlet in that area. So let's make our conclusion for today's session. Today we did a lot. First of all, we recapped everything, right? For all the different individuals from episodes 1 to 4. We looked at some of the commonalities that were unique, the commonalities as well as some of those things that were unique. We found that there were still some more life-altering modifications that we're going to address more in episodes 7, hopefully. I just want you to leave on a good note today because I want to always leave on a good note. We want to realize that steroids can be helpful. Okay, that's the conclusion because it is necessary many, many times. But we want to also be aware that we cannot overuse them because we want to know what the detriment can be. And we want to also make sure that if we have been using steroids for long periods of time, that we seek out getting bone density testing done and utilize some of the ways that I suggested for your tips for increasing your calcium. And then the other one is that we talked about the emotional stress. So don't neglect the fact that you might need to really spend time on trying to debrief and probably seek the help of someone to address that. So it's been great talking to you today. I think we kind of brought some things together from those episodes from before. I'm looking forward to next week and hopefully you'll continue to make some changes. Talk to you soon. Thank you for tuning in today at Let's Achieve Change. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You will find out more about Metanoia Education and Wellness Center on our website at changeachieve.com. We welcome your questions and your feedback. Please feel free to fill out the form on the website and we will contact you directly. I pray that you prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers. Remember, it's all about the change. Thank you.